This is MC of our story, Logan McLean, the oldest son of a noble family that's basically broke beyond repair. The maids in the house were absolutely terrified of him, and honestly, they had good reason. Just look at the guy's face. Dude looked straight up demon on Viagra. So, one day, Logan decided to visit his father at the castle, but the soldiers straight up blocked him at the gate. No entry. Their excuse was brutal. They said he wasn't worthy. According to them, he was nothing more than the son of the Baron's former wife. Around the castle, people either feared Logan or straight up hated him, because until that point, he really had been arrogant and completely despicable. But things were about to flip, because Logan wasn't the same person they thought they knew anymore. The guard's attitude irritated him badly. So, Logan reached into his outfit, pulled out a pair of gloves, and tossed them directly into the guard's face. Full public humiliation. A move like that meant only one thing: the insult would be paid for with a duel. Logan didn't stop there either. He insulted the guard, saying the real failure here was him, calling him a lifelong mediocre soldier. Domian completely lost it. Overcome with rage and emotion, he accepted the duel against the prince. They headed straight to the dueling arena, agreeing to use wooden swords. But here's the thing, knights can use aura. Even with a wooden sword, a strong knight could easily kill a weak warrior. Everyone watching genuinely feared for the prince's life. To them, Logan was obviously a total loser. Domian attacked with everything he had, pouring aura into his strike. But Logan dodged with insanely precise timing, slipping past the attack and countering right over Domian's sword. The impact was so strong that it knocked the weapon straight out of the guard's hand. He literally couldn't keep hold of it. The crowd froze in shock. Whispers. How did Logan, the so-called loser, know how to fight like that? Logan wasn't satisfied. He told Domian he could have a second chance if he wanted. But the soldier was still on the ground, staring at his own hand. He couldn't deny it, the blow had been incredibly heavy. Logan didn't wait for an answer. He stepped in and landed more strikes with the wooden sword. Pure payback for what happened earlier. By the end of it, the entire fight left the castle soldiers shaken to their core. Prince Logan wasn't the weakling he used to be. And the reason behind that changed something none of them could possibly know. The truth is, in the future, when Logan was 40 years old, he was nothing more than a common soldier. His noble family had already been completely destroyed by then. The other soldiers constantly mocked him, especially because, back when Logan was younger, he had lost a duel to his own younger brother. They never understood how someone like him even ended up as a soldier after his entire family was wiped out. Back then, the kingdom had been betrayed, and enemy forces invaded. Every soldier fought bravely, and Logan fought too, but none of it mattered. The kingdom still lost, and in the end, they were all eliminated. That day, Logan died on the battlefield. As his life faded, regret crushed him. He regretted countless things, especially how horrible of a person he had been. More than anything, he wanted to ask his father for forgiveness. Then, suddenly, Logan woke up in his room, completely shaken. He had been injured after taking a blow to the head during the duel against his younger brother. The realization hit him hard. The protagonist couldn't believe it. Was everything he experienced just a nightmare? No, definitely not. He remembered everything too clearly. Logan looked out the window and saw his family's castle, the same place he lived in when he was young. Soon after, his younger brother came to visit him in his room, clearly terrified of how Logan might treat him. The boy was trembling with fear, and it made sense. Logan had always been awful to everyone, especially to him. Logan remembered the last time he treated his brother like absolute garbage, and that moment was exactly why Ronanan never tried to get close to him again. Logan's head throbbed as memories flooded in. Ronanan genuinely cared about his brother, but the servants knew Logan's reputation all too well. Rick, the butler, told the young master Ronanan to leave the room, but for the first time ever, Logan didn't scream. Instead, he spoke gently and told Ronanan to come closer. The boy froze in shock. So did the butler, Rick, thinking young master Logan was acting strangely today. Logan wanted to praise Ronanan's strength, but the words wouldn't come out. He knew words alone weren't enough after treating him like trash for so long. Then Logan hugged his brother for the very first time. He asked for forgiveness for everything he had done. He admitted that he had been a terrible brother, and that Rome was truly amazing. No one in the room could hold back their tears at that moment. After talking for a while, Ronanan finally left Logan alone. The protagonist looked out the window again, and knew for sure this wasn't a dream. He had gone back in time, and this time, he was going to do things differently. This time, he would save his family. A maid accidentally walked into the room and immediately apologized. Rick rushed in after her and apologized too on her behalf, explaining that Mary hadn't done it on purpose. The whole situation was irritating. Logan suddenly realized how ridiculous it was that everyone acted this terrified of him, thinking, just how miserable had he been back then? Logan told them it was nothing, and asked them to bring him some paper and pens. Rick and Mary instantly panicked, wondering if the young master was actually going to work now. When they brought what he asked for, Logan thanked them. Rick was stunned to hear that his master really just said, "Thank you." Now the servants felt like they were dreaming. Once again, Logan realized what a piece of trash he used to be. He asked to be left alone so he could work, but before starting, he remembered something important. The war against the Empire would happen in 10 years. That war would be what destroyed his family, because they would be weak and drowning in debt. His goal now was clear. He wasn't just going to change who he used to be, he was going to change his family's fate. On top of that, an internal war in his region, set to happen just 1 year from now, was the very first event that began shattering his territory's reputation. After working for a while and filling pages non-stop, Logan finally decided it was time to go see his father. As he walked through the estate, he noticed the staff turning their faces away from him, avoiding eye contact like it was instinct. They genuinely believed Logan could end their lives on a whim, and that fear was burned into them. Along the way, a maid carrying freshly cleaned clothes didn't notice him approaching and tripped, crashing to the ground. The girl froze completely. In her mind, this was it. Her life was over. But that wasn't what happened. Logan reached out with a gentle hand and helped her back up. For a moment, it felt like some kind of miracle. Then the girl looked at his face. That terrifying face she recognized all too well. Logan wasn't known for kindness. She immediately begged for her life and ran away without daring to look back. Watching her flee, Logan realized something important. Simply acting different wasn't going to fix things overnight. After all, he'd spent years smiling like a damn murderer. When Logan reached his father's office and announced himself, his expression turned cold again. It had been more than 20 years since he'd last seen his father. As expected, the atmosphere inside was icy. The patriarch of House McLean, Patrick McLean, had no reason to show respect to his eldest son. Logan explained why he was there. He asked for permission to undergo isolated training on the family's mountain property. The protagonist still carried the memories of his past life and already knew how night training worked, but his current body was useless, lazy, and completely untrained. On top of that, he needed money to change his family's situation, and becoming stronger would help with that too. He had to be ready, because in 3 months, that girl would arrive. Patrick immediately questioned him, asking if Logan was trying to run away after losing to Ronian. Logan denied it. He admitted that he was weak and that he had wasted his life until now. He wanted to get better. But Patrick had heard these words before. He refused the request, saying Logan's problem wasn't just a lack of effort. Logan had expected that answer. Logan admitted that his behavior had been his biggest flaw, and said he was determined to change it. His father didn't believe him anymore, and ordered him to leave. The request was denied. This was the consequence of everything Logan had done. Still, Logan didn't back down. He told his father that he had been foolish and immature until now, and that this training would be his first step toward real change. Even the most bitter father couldn't completely abandon his child. Patrick finally relented and said this would be Logan's last chance. Before letting him go, he asked if Logan really thought 3 months was enough to catch up to Ronian. Logan answered firmly that the training wasn't about defeating Ronian. It was about defeating himself. When Logan left the room, Patrick felt something he hadn't felt toward his son in a very long time. It's respect. And Logan noticed it. Even though his father said nothing out loud, Logan knew that changing himself was worth it. Logan went to the mountains and stayed there for 3 full months. His goal wasn't just to train his body, but to reach something greater. True warriors could defeat even dragons by using the life force stored within their cores. Day after day, Logan trained himself to absolute exhaustion. By the end of those 3 months, he managed to form his core, something he had only accomplished at 40 years old in his previous life. With it, he could push his body beyond its breaking point. On the final day of training, Logan stood before a massive tree and prepared his strongest move. He focused all his aura, channeling it into his sword and muscles. The strike was powerful enough to slice through space itself before cutting the target clean in half. This was the power he had gained at the end of his previous life, and now he could use it at this young age. Even so, the strain on his weak body was enormous. This was a technique meant only as a last resort. Now it was time to go home and start making real changes. The first change was obvious: his clothes. He smelled like a sewer. When Logan returned home and went to show his progress to his father, the guard Domian stopped him at the entrance, saying, only those with direct McLean blood were allowed to pass without authorization. That was the moment Logan realized his authority within the family was slipping away. Right then and there, Logan challenged Domian to a duel. He shocked every guard in the castle by effortlessly defeating a trained soldier. This was the result of his training and combat experience, and it ensured no other guards would try the same stunt. Later, inside his father's office, Logan and Patrick spoke again. Patrick admitted that what he had seen was impressive, acknowledged Logan's awakening, and asked what had happened during his training. Logan realized his father had been watching, something he never expected. He explained that he had simply abandoned his greed and let everything go. As he trained with that mindset, he eventually felt a force filling him from within. Logan reflected that even if it sounded unbelievable, this insight came from his past life. Only after giving up on avenging his family had he become a force user back then, awakening only after 40. Patrick was impressed that such a simple realization had led to such change, and said Logan had truly transformed. However, he was still furious. After achieving such a breakthrough, The first thing Logan did was attack a knight. Logan argued that the man deserved it and asked whether his father had heard the full story from the soldiers. Patrick said he had, but still believed those measures weren't necessary. They were necessary, Logan insisted, surprising his father. The knight had tried to deceive his lord's blood and make a fool of him. Letting that slide would poison the family's discipline. Logan then reflected on hierarchy, the foundation that keeps any organization functioning. Once hierarchy is shaken, the organization weakens over time, something he had learned during 10 years as a mercenary. When dealing with armed men, order must be established in a single decisive move. What happened that day would serve as a warning to the other knights. Patrick admitted Domian was largely at fault for failing his duty and trying to trick Logan. Still, he felt Logan's actions were risky and said it was better to hold back in the future. Logan was shocked by how easily his father forgave him, especially compared to his previous life. Seeing Logan's expression, Patrick even joked and asked if he wanted a punishment. Logan replied that he was good. Patrick ended the conversation by saying he still didn't approve of what Logan had done and warned him never to act like that again without permission, especially since he hadn't officially received his rank yet. Logan respectfully said he would remember that. Soon after that, Logan's father announced that his fiancée, Rena, would be visiting soon. At first glance, Logan looked surprised by the news, but it wasn't surprise at all. It was pure excitement. The day to get the cash was finally approaching. Right on cue, Princess Rena Wolves was formally introduced. Every lady present fell silent, completely stunned by her beauty, and every guard instantly felt jealous of Logan. When Rena stepped forward, she greeted Lord McLean gracefully, saying it had been far too long and politely asking about his well-being. Patrick McLean, momentarily stunned by her appearance, commented on how she had grown into a beautiful woman since the last time he saw her. Rick watched from a distance as well, clearly impressed by how much she had matured, but then he glanced at Master Logan, who didn't look impressed in the slightest. Rena then said she had a letter entrusted to her by her father, the Count, and began reading it aloud. The letter was addressed to Baron Patrick McLean, and it was painfully boring. Over the next 30 minutes, even the guards struggled to stay awake, but the ending snapped everyone back to reality. The final request stated that due to unavoidable circumstances, the arranged marriage between Rena and Logan was to be cancelled. After hearing the letter, Logan quickly understood the message behind it. The Wolves clan had expected Patrick McLean to become a powerful aura user, but instead he had remained a high-ranking knight for over 20 years. And to make matters worse, Logan himself was considered a complete loser. Joining the Wolf clan with the McLeans simply made no sense anymore, so they chose to go their separate ways. Patrick was furious. Breaking off the marriage for such vague reasons was nothing but an insult. He understood immediately that the Wolves were trying to humiliate House McLean. Rena denied that, saying she had personally asked to be the messenger because she feared Patrick would misunderstand their intentions. She wanted to clear things up face to face. She spoke about her vivid memories of spending a year at the McLean residence as a child. She recalled the peaceful days, the beautiful surroundings, and the good moments she shared with Logan. Those memories meant a lot to her, and she didn't want to let them go. But she was bound to her family's will and had no choice but to obey her superiors. The only thing she could do was come in person and apologize to Logan and Patrick. Everyone was moved, murmuring that her heart was as beautiful as her face. Everyone except Logan, his stepmother Mary, and Daddy Patrick. Mary bluntly asked Rena what the real reason behind the breakup was. She demanded to know what these so-called unavoidable circumstances actually were. Logan thought about his stepmother, Ronian's biological mother, and how she had always treated him as an enemy because of the succession issue. He hadn't expected her to interfere, but family honor was clearly a different matter. Rena apologized again and avoided the question, claiming she didn't know the real reason. She explained that since she was only meant to marry into another family, her father never discussed important matters with her. Mary grew furious and concluded that this explained why Rena had come to announce the breakup without any clear justification. Rena, visibly terrified, her white dress now stained with her makeup melted by sweat, looked up at the McLeans and announced that to compensate for the inconvenience, the Wolf clan was willing to pay 3 million gold pieces. McLean's financial manager, Dwayne Filsner, nearly had a heart attack on the spot. Logan, on the other hand, was thrilled. He thought the money was finally his, but no chance. Patrick nearly exploded with rage, demanding to know how she dared to propose something like that. A knight from the Wolf House immediately stepped in front of Rena, protecting her, and begged Patrick to calm down. Patrick asked whether he was a high-ranking knight like himself, admitting that it was impressive for someone so young to reach that level. He continued, saying that perhaps injuring the rising star of the Wolves family would be fair compensation for the dishonor inflicted on the McLeans. The knight replied that his master, Kyron Wolves, regarded Lord McLean as an honorable man and would never target the young princess or anyone younger. Rena then spoke up, saying she also did not wish to buy honor with money. She asked them to accept the gold as a sincere gesture, to preserve the friendship between the two families. Patrick clenched his teeth. If he pushed further, he would lose his own honor. He realized this was exactly why Karen had sent these young people. Patrick stated that a visitor was still a visitor, even if they brought bad luck, and that House McLean would never harm its guests. However, he firmly refused the Wolves clan's one-sided offer. House McLean asked for only one thing. Princess Rena Wolf was to personally and sincerely apologize to Logan. Patrick made it clear that he would accept no other compensation. At that moment, Logan stepped in. As the person directly involved, he said he had a request. Internally, Logan knew they needed to accept the money. Letting them off with words alone was insane. 3 million gold was the entire annual budget of House McLean. Half of their current funds came from his stepmother's family, and if that support vanished, they would go bankrupt instantly. And for what? Honor. To Logan, it felt like everyone had lost their minds. Logan told his father he wanted to accept the Wolves' terms. Patrick became furious again, asking if Logan intended to make him go back on his word. Logan thought about the pressure his father carried. Even without aura, Patrick was still a high-ranking knight, but that meant nothing compared to others in the kingdom. If he couldn't handle this, he would never move forward. Patrick insisted House McLean wasn't poor enough to sell its honor for money. Logan sighed deeply and replied that they were exactly that poor. He explained that House McLean already owed the bank 3 million gold pieces. The annual interest alone was 150,000 gold. Without Kiros's money, they would have gone bankrupt long ago. They were the kingdom's biggest family of beggars. On top of that, they owed over 2 million gold to the kingdom they served. Settling this matter with just an apology would only spread rumors that they had bowed to the Wolves. Rena tried to intervene, claiming the Wolves clan wasn't irrational and respected House McLean's honor. Logan immediately asked whether she truly found it rational to unilaterally break off the engagement. A memory from Logan's past life surfaced. Back then, he had believed Rena was genuinely saddened by their separation, but that belief shattered after one incident. He remembered being alone with her in a bedroom. Rena thanked him for coming and said that even if things ended that day, she wanted to create one last memory together. Logan, believing his life as a noble was over, asked her to run away with him that night. That was when she threw a knife at his face, forcing him to draw his sword to defend himself. Rena tore her own clothes and accused him of thinking someone like him deserved her. She mocked him, told him to learn his place, and asked why he even carried a sword after losing to a child. Outside, a thunderstorm raged as she screamed, accusing Logan of trying to assault her. With his sword already drawn, the lie was easy to believe. Logan remembered how he had already been blamed for countless things, to the point where not even his family trusted him. In the end, House McLean had been forced to apologize to the Wolves and pay heavy compensation. Because of Rena, Logan had never been able to trust women again. He thought of her as a street bitch and vowed that this time she wouldn't get away with it. After recalling all this, Logan reconsidered his plan. He had intended to slowly rebuild his reputation by showing everyone he had changed, but the fight with Damien made him realize something crucial. Soldiers ignored disrespect toward him, and rumors about his loss to his brother had spread while he was gone. You couldn't transform the family by winning over people like them. With only 9 months left until the regional war, reputation no longer mattered. Saving his family did. Logan swallowed his pride and told Rena he would accept the Wolves clan's compensation, even if it meant defying his own family. Rena was speechless. Patrick exploded with anger, demanding to know how Logan dared oppose his will. Logan replied calmly that he wasn't satisfied with empty apologies, leaving his father stunned. Words carried away by the wind had no value, and honor built on them was just as light. Rena tried to salvage the situation, saying the Wolf clan wished to obey the Baron's decision, and asked Patrick what he chose. Logan saw through her act, realizing she was trying to protect her father's reputation, and was likely terrified of paying 3 million gold. Patrick looked down at Rena and declared that as the head of House McLean, he would accept only a sincere apology. However, he would leave it to Logan to decide whether the apology was sincere. Mary was furious. Patrick warned Logan to think carefully, reminding him that accepting money for dishonor would open the door for honor to be traded again in the future. Logan didn't hesitate. As the one directly involved in the broken engagement, he accepted the compensation offered by the Wolves clan. The decision shocked Mary and visibly upset Rena. Patrick, disappointed, said he thought Logan had improved, but instead he had changed for the worse. He blamed himself for failing to teach him the true value of honor. Logan said nothing out loud, but in his mind, he knew everything he was doing was for the sake of his family. Back in his room, after receiving the handsome compensation from Rena Wolves, Logan was interrupted by a knock on the door. Assuming it was Rick, he casually told whoever it was to come in. Instead, Dwayne, the family's financial advisor, stepped inside. Seeing him there immediately made Logan wonder what this man was plotting. Inside Dwayne's mind, a long train of thoughts unfolded. As House McLean's financial advisor, he had been forced to manage the entire estate with a budget that kept shrinking year after year. On one side were soldiers constantly demanding better weapons, and on the other were servants struggling to secure enough supplies to survive the winter. To fill the financial gaps, Dwayne spent most of his days begging the patriarchs for funds. At times, he genuinely questioned whether he was a financial advisor or just the king of beggars. He often thought that if this wasn't his hometown, he would have resigned long ago. But now, things were finally different. With the 3 million gold, he could finally breathe easy for at least a few years. The only obstacle he saw standing in his way was that idiot. In his mind, Logan would surely have to split the 3 million with him. Dwayne put on a polite smile and told Logan he had only come by to greet him after the impressive showing he made the day before. The way Logan defended himself and refused to yield to unfair external pressure proved he was an incredible apprentice, worthy of becoming the heir of House McClane. As Dwayne praised him, he imagined his flattery had deeply touched Logan. After all, the boy had never been praised before, having only ever caused trouble. Taking his money should be easy, but Logan wasn't impressed in the slightest. Dwayne continued, saying that in times like these, 3 million gold was like rain falling in the middle of a desert. Logan's clever handling of the situation had allowed the family to breathe again. Logan remained completely stone-faced and replied that he didn't see why the family would feel relieved, since the money belonged to him. Hearing that, Dwayne felt all hope drain out of him. He believed Logan intended to keep every coin for himself, but he forced himself to stay calm. After 20 years as the McClane family's financial advisor, swallowing his pride had become second nature. This situation was no different. Suddenly, he began to cry. That reaction caught Logan off guard. He asked if the family's situation was really that bad. Dwayne explained that Logan might not know this, but House McClane already owed 3 million gold to Cooper Bank. He tried to continue, saying the interest alone amounted to 150,000 gold per year, but Logan interrupted him and finished the sentence himself. Dwayne stared at him in shock and asked if he already knew. Logan replied that the interest shouldn't be a problem. After all, it was harvest season, and the income from the harvest should cover it. Dwayne desperately tried to explain that simply running the barony cost an enormous amount of money, and that the family was always operating on an extremely tight budget. He suggested that even a little help could change things. But Logan cut him off again, making it clear he didn't want to hear it. Confused, Dwayne asked why Logan wouldn't help, especially since he had opposed the Baron earlier for the sake of the family. Logan agreed with him. He said he would use the money for the family's benefit, but not to cover the Baron's immediate expenses. Instead, he needed to prepare for the future. Dwayne grew furious inside, thinking Logan had no idea what he was talking about and should just hand over the money immediately. Logan then calmly asked whether paying off the family's debts would truly change anything. Dwayne argued that a larger budget would make managing the estate easier for at least a few years. Logan pressed further, asking what would happen after that. Even if things improved temporarily, they would eventually fall back into debt, because House McClane had no special products to sell. It was a vicious cycle, and Logan intended to break it with a plan of his own. For that plan, he needed the money. Dwayne was completely stunned. He wondered if this was really the same young master he knew. He had always thought Logan was a careless kid who had no interest in family affairs. Logan then said he had a favor to ask. If Dwayne helped him, Logan might even share a portion of the money to help cover some family expenses. Dwayne immediately asked what he needed. Logan answered simply, he needed to gather mercenaries. Later, Logan spoke with Rick. It looked like he was preparing to leave again, and Rick immediately demanded to know where the hell he was going. It hadn't even been long since Logan returned from his isolated training. Logan replied that he was leaving to make money. Rick pointed out that Logan already had a substantial amount, but Logan insisted it wasn't enough. He explained that the patriarch would never allow him to leave now, especially with the tension inside the castle, but Logan had no intention of asking for permission. He planned to slip out quietly. Rick was shocked, but Logan didn't care. He knew that if he couldn't change his reputation now, it would never change. That meant gathering power from outside the family. Luckily, he knew exactly what was happening beyond the estate. Just like in his past life, when he had been kicked out of the family, he already knew his first step was to find a certain individual. Rick tried to reason with him, saying he wasn't thinking straight, and that becoming a fugitive at this point would only make things worse. Logan grew irritated by Rick's persistence. Rick asked what Logan planned to do if he simply ran away, and even said that if Logan really intended to leave, he might as well trample all over him first. Logan was already close to doing just that, given how little Rick seemed to care. Logan reassured him, saying everything would be fine. He would leave a letter for his father, so that no one would blame Rick. Rick asked what he planned to write, but Logan only smiled in response. Rick finally let out a sigh of relief. After Logan disappeared, Rick delivered the letter to the patriarch, who looked like he was ready to turn D-Day into a child's game. The letter began with a long, formal greeting, and explained that, heartbroken over the broken engagement, I had decided to leave for some fresh air but would return soon. Signed by Logan McClane. After that, Rick could only cry, praying for the young master's safe return. A history of the McClane family is then laid out, revealing that just 200 years ago, the family didn't hold the position it does today. Back then, their territory stretched into neighboring counties, and they were respected as the rulers of the southwest region of the Kingdom of Grandia. However, by the time of the current lord, Patrick McClane, The incompetence of the last 3 generations had dragged the family down. Their title was downgraded, and their territory shrank dramatically. The massive grain depot, once known as the Mclane Plains, was handed over to a powerful vassal, and the fertile lands were split apart and distributed elsewhere. The place the Mclanes were left with felt like exile. Dry, barren land near the southern mountains, as if they had been kicked out entirely. From that moment on, financial hardship became inevitable. There were no notable regional products, and unlike other mountainous territories, there were no copper mines either. Logan reflected that even if they somehow won the upcoming regional war, they would still have to keep begging Kyros for support. To break this endless cycle, he needed a massive amount of money, far more than the 3 million gold he currently had. He knew there was someone who could help him do that. As Logan entered Cairo, the largest commercial city in the Kingdom of Grandia, voices filled the air from every direction. Merchants shouted out offers for rings, shields, fresh fruits, and vegetables. Walking through the city made Logan realize just how remote and miserable the McLane barony truly was. According to his memories, the man he was looking for had spent his youth in Cairo, and rumor said he still lived nearby. That man was known as the Golden Beetle, Philip Claude. He was a key figure in the Ares Empire, the strongest nation on the continent. The empire was a centralized power built on merit, meaning talent alone could elevate someone, regardless of age or gender. Even foreigners could rise to power and wealth there. Philip Claude was the perfect example. Born in Grandia, he became one of the richest merchants in the empire and the largest arms dealer on the continent. To many, he was branded a traitor to the Kingdom of Grandia. In reality, however, despite being called the Golden Beetle, Philip had quietly supported people from his homeland and used his wealth to help create the miracle of Grandia's sovereignty. As Logan walked through the streets, he noticed a young man standing in the middle of the road and wondered if that could be him. The boy had just been scammed and was staring blankly ahead, clearly wondering how he would survive without a single coin to his name. Logan had heard rumors that Philip's business collapsed due to a scam, but witnessing it firsthand was far worse than he imagined. As the boy seemed to spiral into despair, even contemplating ending it all, Logan approached and tried to start a conversation, asking if he was Philip Claude. Philip confirmed it, though suspiciously, and asked who Logan was. From Logan's red eyes, steady gaze, and worn armor, Philip assumed the young man was dangerous. Logan said he wanted to talk for a moment, but Philip remained wary, questioning how Logan even knew who he was. At that moment, Philip noticed something in Logan's eyes he had seen countless times before: greed. He quickly theorized that this young man, dressed in old armor and appearing at such timing, must be some mercenary thug. Logan tried to explain himself, but Philip panicked and started yelling that the payment deadline hadn't arrived yet. He shouted that the sale of his commercial property would be finalized in 3 days and told Logan to come back then. Logan assured him he wasn't there to collect any debt. Philip, barking like a rabid dog, kept yelling that none of his sales had gone through yet and ordered Logan to leave. Logan tried again to calm him, saying he wasn't there to collect money, but to invest. That stopped Philip cold. When he asked if Logan was serious, Logan confirmed it. Philip started thinking that if this man wasn't here to collect debts, then he had to be insane for wanting to invest in someone who had completely failed. Still, part of him wondered if Logan might be telling the truth. He asked how much Logan wanted to invest. Logan flipped the question back, asking how much Philip needed and saying he would help him clear his debts and get back on his feet. Philip remained suspicious and carefully studied Logan's expression and the dirt-stained armor. He concluded the young man must have traveled a long distance. When Logan pressed again for an amount, Philip snapped, calling him a disgusting scoundrel. He accused Logan of trying to trick him like everyone else had. He went on to say that he wasn't an investor and that the crest on Logan's armor marked him as a member of the Mclane barony in the southwest. To Philip, the Mclanes were nothing but beggars, living off their rich relatives. How could a family that couldn't even pay its debts afford to invest? He warned Logan that impersonating a noble could get him executed, and complained that Logan had chosen the wrong target, since he was completely broke. Logan analyzed the situation calmly. Even at rock bottom, Philip still showed sharp judgment, exactly what you'd expect from a future tycoon. Logan wondered how to calm him down as Philip ranted in the street about not having money to eat, let alone to die. Then Logan had an idea. He asked Philip to pay attention and released his aura. Philip was left stunned. Someone who awakened force so early wouldn't throw it away on a petty scam. He apologized, admitting that too much had happened recently and that he was overly sensitive. He asked what Logan really wanted from him. Logan replied that he wanted to hire him permanently and, as a bonus, pay off all his debts. Philip grew suspicious again and asked whether the Mclane family even had that kind of money. Logan asked how much the debt was, estimating around 250,000 gold, and said he would cover it and provide another 300,000 on top of that. He then revealed the cash he'd been carrying. Philip stared at Logan as if he were an angel. He signed the contract immediately. The terms were simple and terrifying. If Philip ever tried to harm his boss intentionally, he would suffer unbearable pain, as if his soul were being ripped apart. The witch who sealed the contract contract explained that if Philip didn't like the terms, he could awaken his force and become at least a high-ranking knight, hire a four-circle mage, or pay several hundred times the contract's value to break the curse. Philip was left speechless yet again. She dismissed them casually, telling them to come back sometime. Philip wondered if he had just been completely screwed. He realized that a single page of the magic contract was worth 30 slaves, meaning he had just paid a fortune to make Logan his savior. Logan explained that since they barely knew each other, trust didn't exist yet. If he was investing a fortune, he needed a guarantee. Once trust was built, the contract would be removed. He extended his hand. Philip thought the contract was a mess, with no deadlines or conditions, but he had no choice. He shook Logan's hand. When he asked what Logan needed him to do first, Logan replied that they needed to buy monster meat. Philip immediately called him a psychopath. Logan thought the reaction was understandable. Monster blood and flesh were poisonous, and burning them was considered common sense. But in a few years, everything would change. Once word spread that monster blood could be neutralized with common ingredients, food-scarce regions began consuming monsters. That winter, cases of deficiency started disappearing after people consumed Kellogg meat. Even individuals with injuries that caused sterility saw improvement. A year later, the Royal Magic Tower confirmed the findings. The Kellogg monster vanished from the continent as the species was hunted to extinction after it was proven to enhance fertility. With that knowledge, Logan knew he could easily make 3 million gold, maybe far more depending on how much he secured. Walking beside a madman like this, Philip glanced at Logan with disappointment and wondered if it wouldn't be better to just run away. Inside a tavern, Logan and Philip sat down to discuss what their next move should be. Logan casually told Philip that he wanted to purchase monster meat worth 1 million gold coins. Philip nearly lost his mind hearing that and thought Logan had completely gone insane. Logan told him to calm down, confidently assuring him that he would make money even if he spent that much. Philip strongly objected and asked if Logan was absolutely sure about what he was doing. Logan confirmed without hesitation. Philip then asked what the price range per unit was for Kellogg meat. He explained that Kellogg meat was practically worthless at the moment. Most people simply burned it because there were no buyers. If someone at level 0 was sent to retrieve the bodies, it would cost around 200 gold due to kingdom transport fees. That fee was charged per unit. However, if multiple Kellogg's were transported together, the cost would drop significantly. Philip was impressed that Logan had even considered transport fees and admitted that Logan's calculations were correct. He asked if, with that price per unit and a budget of 1 million gold, Logan planned to hire a mercenary guild to conduct a kingdom-wide hunt and buy everything they brought back. Logan confirmed it and asked if Philip saw any issues with that plan. Philip immediately explained that the approach was wrong. Since monster meat was being discarded anyway, Logan should hire a merchant guild instead. Merchants would transport and sell anything as long as there was money involved. Even if it was considered trash, they would gladly bring it. Philip confidently added that once Logan placed the order, they would likely deliver every piece of Kellogg meat in the kingdom, already cut and prepared. Logan was impressed, thinking his investment was already paying off. Half-jokingly and somewhat suspiciously, he called Philip an adorable punk. Philip brushed it off and told Logan not to worry about money anymore. From now on, everything would be handled by him. After all, his own future depended on Logan's success. Logan then handed Philip a list of materials, including ironwood cartridges, springs, and glue, instructing him to buy them in large quantities. Philip once again grew suspicious and asked if Logan was planning to open a toy factory. Logan replied that he had something far better in mind. In reality, Logan was having Philip acquire raw materials for weapons of war. He remembered how weapons made from these exact materials had been used during the invasion of the Kingdom of Grandia in his past life. Depending on the situation, even a single soldier equipped with them could hold back a knight. He also recalled that he had already tasked Dwayne with hiring mercenaries. Simply putting these weapons in their hands would be enough to gain a major advantage in the regional war. However, before that could happen, Logan needed two things: a craftsman capable of producing these weapons, and an instructor skilled enough to train the mercenaries. 2 days later, in Harun, the city of mercenaries, Logan was speaking with Kaisalon, a rank A mercenary, attempting to hire him as an instructor. Kaisalon explained that he had never trained anyone productively before. Logan insisted the job wouldn't be difficult, since he only needed Kaisalon to train rank C mercenaries. Still hesitant, Kaisalon said he didn't know what Logan had heard, but all he had ever done was guide a few young people. He suggested Logan leave the task to professional instructors. Logan internally dismissed the excuse. He knew Kaisalon well from his past life. Kaisalon could wield every existing weapon, had exceptional horsemanship, and more importantly, was an outstanding instructor. The mercenary squad Kaisalon trained after retiring from a serious injury had been stronger than any other. Logan offered 4,000 gold coins. Kaisalon refused. Logan raised it to 6,000. Still no. 7,000. Kaisalon continued refusing, claiming money couldn't buy everything. Logan raised it again to 8,000. That was the breaking point. Kaisalon finally accepted, even thanking Logan in advance. As they talked, Logan revealed that he was the firstborn son of Baron McLean, and asked if Kaisalon wasn't curious why he was hiring mercenaries from the countryside. Kaisalon replied that he didn't care as long as he was paid. Walking through the streets, they witnessed a man whipping a group of people, shouting that if they were late again, he would kill them all. Kaisalon explained that Harun was known as the city of mercenaries and slaves, and that scenes like this were common. The city soon turned into a full slave market. Logan replied that he was familiar with this reality and even considered buying a slave himself. A merchant noticed him, assuming he was a clueless country bumpkin, and called him over, boasting about unbeatable prices. The moment the merchant recognized Kaisalon, his face went pale with fear. Seeing that, Logan relaxed, thinking that hiring Kaisalon had already been worth it. They arrived at a shop with far more guards than the others. Logan immediately realized this was the place. An elderly merchant greeted him and said he assumed Logan knew what he was getting into. Logan replied that he was there to buy a dwarf. The merchant confirmed he had come to the right place and explained that races from other worlds were rare, which was why they were treated carefully. He first showed a pair of elves, boasting about how difficult they were to obtain. Logan showed no interest and told him to bring out the chained dwarf in the back. The merchant pointed out that it was clearly a dwarf and added that even among dwarves, famous for craftsmanship, this one had reached an expert level. That surprised Logan. He had always believed dwarves were naturally skilled craftsmen, but an expert was beyond what he expected. Logan asked for the price. The merchant said it would start at 200,000 gold. Logan looked him up and down and asked if he looked like a fool. The merchant nearly wet himself and immediately lowered the price by 50,000. Kaisalon was shocked by how easily Logan forced the price down. The dwarf commented that Logan was ruthless. Logan thought it was just common sense. Logan told the dwarf he was taking him to the Mechlin estate in the southwest and that he would do the work assigned to him. The dwarf agreed without resistance. Logan reflected that while dwarves were renowned craftsmen, slave dwarves were different. Without passion, they couldn't create true works. Logan promised that if the dwarf worked sincerely for the next 20 years, he would be sent back to the mountains. 20 years meant nothing to a dwarf. The promise made him happy, and he attempted to thank Logan. At that moment, another slave broke free and tried to escape. He didn't get far before a soldier caught him. Logan immediately recognized the slave. Blue hair, blue eyes, a familiar presence. Logan muttered aloud, catching Kaisalon's attention. He couldn't believe he had found the noble slayer here. Logan remembered his past life. Once a slave, this man escaped after killing his masters and began slaughtering nobles and knights. After disappearing for 10 years, he reappeared as an aura user and devoted his life to killing nobles, earning the title of Noble Slayer. Logan realized the timeline matched. This escape attempt should happen a year after Logan became a mercenary, meaning this man was still a slave. If Logan saved him now, he would gain a future aura user. The problem was that the man was a violent psychopath. Logan decided that if he ever became uncontrollable, he would simply imprison him. As the master raised his whip again, Logan drew his sword and blocked the strike to the man's leg. The slave trader noticed the family crest and immediately grew arrogant, assuming Logan was a customer. He apologized, claiming the slave was misbehaving and needed discipline. Logan said he wanted to buy slaves, pointing to the two children. The merchant warned him that both were rare and expensive, one red-haired, the other blue-eyed. The merchant quoted 10,000 gold each. Logan calculated that a strong slave cost about 300 gold, and scoffed at the absurd markup. He countered with 500 gold per child. The merchant protested, but Logan snapped, asking if he thought Logan didn't know slave prices. The merchant panicked and accepted, blaming Victor for always causing trouble. Kaisalon carried the injured boy on his back, surprised by his fast recovery. Logan casually said it was nothing, though in truth he had been slowly releasing force to heal him. Victor suddenly tried to attack Logan. He didn't even get close. Logan grabbed him by the neck and asked if he was brave or just stupid. He warned Victor to choose his enemies better. Logan promised safety for him and his sister if he obeyed, but threatened to kill them both if it happened again. He released him and said he planned to raise Victor as a knight. Victor asked if he was serious. Logan confirmed it and explained that knights were honorary nobles and could escape slavery. Not just Victor, but his sister as well. Victor swore loyalty instantly. Watching them, Logan realized his assumption was correct. The sister was the key to controlling the Noble Slayer's violence. Logan stated that their training would begin as soon as they returned home. Logan then asked Hamar the dwarf to step closer for a moment. He told him he would begin drafting a contract, a magical one, and clearly explained its terms. If Hamar worked for him for the next 20 years, Logan would personally send him back to the mountains afterward. Hamar was stunned. He couldn't believe Logan was serious about returning him to his own people. Logan continued calmly, saying that it was hard to trust promises made of nothing but words carried away by the wind. He asked if there was any issue with the contract, or if Hamar didn't want to go through with it. Hamar responded immediately and gratefully. He said he wanted it with all his heart, and would do anything Logan asked of him. He kept thanking him, unable to believe that someone would truly do this for him. Watching his reaction, Logan thought to himself that if all it took to motivate Hamar was a contract, then he was the one gaining the most here. He reflected that this entire venture had already given him everything he wanted and more. Not only had he secured ensured proper preparations for the upcoming clan war, but he had also managed to get his hands on the noble slayer. Everything was progressing smoothly. What he didn't know at that moment was that rumors about his strange behavior had already spread throughout the Mclane estate while he was away. His reputation had completely tanked. Rick, meanwhile, was drowning in confusion, trying desperately to contain the situation, while wondering what the hell the young master was even doing anymore. Soon after, Logan returned home, and no one in the world was happier to see him than Rick. Logan greeted him casually and asked how he had been. Rick nearly lost it, asking whether Logan was serious for even saying that. Barely holding himself together, he demanded to know what Logan had been doing, and whether he had heard the rumors flying around. According to those rumors, Logan had become a perverted monster who spent 150,000 gold on monster meat. Rick explained what had happened. A few days earlier, someone named Philip had gathered every merchant he could find and announced that he wanted to buy monster meat in the name of Logan McLean. Even before that, people had already been gossiping about Logan, about his broken engagement, and how he had practically robbed his fiancée. Philip, unaware of Logan's past, assumed his master was just some eccentric lunatic. Still, he saw opportunity in the chaos. He deliberately spread even more bizarre rumors about monster meat to attract sellers. Then he dropped the purchase price as low as possible, while still keeping merchants interested, offering 1 gold piece per kilogram. He knew no merchant would refuse selling trash if someone was willing to pay for it. He even told them to bring every bit of monster meat they could get their hands on. Philip's aggressive sales tactics worked. Merchants began gathering monster meat in large quantities, and rumors about Logan spread across nearly the entire thieves' quarter. Hearing all of this, Logan simply commented that Philip had done his job perfectly. Rick was stunned. He couldn't understand how Logan could laugh at a time like this. Logan told him to look at the expressions of the people who had come back with him, and think about how many rumors they must have heard to be wearing faces like that. To Logan, there was nothing to worry about. He calmly said that everything would be over soon. Rick warned him not to be so relaxed. The next thing waiting for him was a meeting with the patriarch, and he was furious. Inside his father's office, Patrick asked Logan whether he had enjoyed running away from home. Logan answered honestly that the trip had been worth it. Patrick said he had heard plenty of rumors about the strange and reckless things Logan had been doing, but at least it seemed like something had come out of it. Logan defended himself, saying rumors were nothing more than baseless nonsense, and that he didn't regret any of his actions. His stepmother immediately cut in, telling Patrick that she had warned him already. Logan had no awareness of his own standing, and didn't understand how his behavior could disgrace the family. Logan didn't even let her finish. He interrupted her, saying she was exaggerating. All he had done was use the money from the broken engagement in a way he saw fit. Mary pushed again, asking Patrick if he had heard that, and whether he was still going to take Logan's side after everything. That was when Patrick finally snapped. He shouted for her to stop, then calmly but firmly told her to leave the room. He wanted to speak with Logan alone. Once they were alone, Patrick warned Logan that this was the final chance he would give him. Standing in front of his furious father, Logan felt a rare sense of fear. Patrick asked what was really going on in his son's head, and said they needed to talk honestly about everything that had happened. Logan knew his father wouldn't overlook things this time. He replied that even if he explained, Patrick wouldn't understand. Patrick shot back, asking whether Logan was the one who didn't want to be understood. He asked if Logan realized what people were saying about him, that he was violent, cruel, obsessed with money, and even unstable. Patrick asked how much longer he was supposed to keep covering for him, and if the time ever came when he couldn't anymore, he begged Logan to at least warn him. That way, Patrick could tell himself he had done everything possible for the sake of Logan's deceased mother. Logan was stunned. Patrick had never mentioned his mother in his previous life, not even when Logan was cast out. That alone made him think his father hadn't fully given up on him yet. So Logan asked for one more thing. He asked Patrick to give him 1 year. He promised that within that year, he would prove the reasons behind everything he was doing. Once again, he pleaded for one final chance. Later, Patrick was shown alone in his room, replaying the conversation in his mind. He admitted to himself how strange it felt for a father and son to be negotiating favors like strangers. He thought that if Logan failed to prove himself after 1 year, he would have to make a decision, because before being a father, he was the patriarch of House McLean. Patrick looked at a portrait of Logan's mother and apologized to her, saying he didn't understand what was happening to their son. He continued speaking to her image, admitting that he had promised to protect Logan and raise him properly, but in the end, everything had fallen apart because of his own neglect. Walking through the castle corridors, Logan suddenly ran into his younger brother. What he saw made him freeze. Ronian had awakened his force. Ronian commented that Logan guessed it quickly, and added that he had caught up faster than expected. Logan felt genuine happiness, seeing Ronian awaken so early at only 14 years old. In his past life, Ronian's force had only manifested during the clan war, but this time it had happened far sooner. Ronian told Logan that it was thanks to him. Seeing Logan's confusion, he explained that when Logan returned, the knights tried to stop him from reaching him. In that moment of desperation, his force awakened, and he ended up defeating the knights just to meet Logan. Logan burst out laughing and praised him, telling him he had done well. He thought that once Ronian's force stabilized, teaching him the secrets of the divine sword would make him far stronger than he ever was in the past. Later, in a cabin south of the McLean estate, Logan met with Dwayne. Dwayne informed him that all 35 rank C mercenaries he requested had arrived. The mercenaries were furious. It had been 10 days since they were summoned, and none of them had seen Logan even once. Some muttered that a petty baron's family wouldn't dare provoke a mercenary guild unless they were insane. Others said they might never find out, since the rumors surrounding Logan had already reached them and weren't light at all. They mocked his appearance, saying he wore armor and carried a sword like he was pretending to be a soldier. Hearing all this, Logan realized that if he didn't put these professional scoundrels in their place, he'd never be able to control them. He addressed one of the mercenaries directly and asked if he thought it was funny to wear armor and carry a sword. The man replied that he didn't understand, and asked how Logan had even heard his comment from that distance. Logan mocked him openly, saying that way of thinking only worked if you had the talent to back it up. He called him nothing more than an insignificant C-rank mercenary, and asked what imaginary skills gave him the confidence to look down on others. He sarcastically asked if he had offended him, acknowledging that even low-level men had pride, and told him to step forward if he wanted to settle it. Logan then made a clear offer. If the mercenary could land even a single hit on him, he would be allowed to leave immediately, and would be paid a full year's salary. Logan swore it on his noble honor, and made sure everyone present served as witnesses. The mercenary stepped forward, pleased, saying Logan couldn't take his words back now. He tried to intimidate Logan by sizing him up, but his massive build only drew comments from the crowd. Some wondered if he was already rank B. Others said he might reach it after this job. Logan scoffed, realizing that was exactly where the man's confidence came from. The mercenary told Logan to attack first. Logan replied that he would regret that choice. The mercenary ignored the warning, claiming he had used a sword far longer and didn't need to worry. He even asked if Logan needed any advantages. Logan focused his force and punched him square in the face. The impact stunned everyone. The duel ended instantly, with the mercenary sprawled on the ground and teeth flying through the air. The remaining mercenaries stared in disbelief. Logan simply stretched his shoulder, scoffed, and asked if anyone else felt like running their mouth. They couldn't believe someone his age had already mastered force. It felt absurd. Kaisalon watched quietly, thinking he had always known Logan was different, but never imagined he was this capable. Logan declared that no one would be making comments anymore. He then formally introduced himself as Logan McLean, the one who had summoned them. He explained that many of them were probably wondering why he was spending so much money to hire mercenaries. He told them his plan was to train them into crossbow knights. Dwayne and Kaisalon were both surprised, and the mercenaries didn't know what to make of it. One of them muttered that they would spend most of their time reloading. Kaisalon quietly told Logan that crossbows were inefficient weapons for knights. Logan replied that he already knew that. Confused, Kaisalon asked why he would insist on them anyway. Logan explained that crossbows were far more destructive than bows, but inexperienced users needed over a minute to reload on horseback. Even carrying several loaded crossbows, they would run out of firepower quickly. It was no surprise they were confused. Logan told Kaisalon to train them properly first, even if he thought Logan was just wasting money playing soldier. He assured him the reason would become clear later. As a final statement, Logan said that crossbow cavalry would become a powerful force for House McLean, not just for the upcoming war, but even beyond the conflict with the thieves. Kaisalon still didn't fully understand, but he accepted his master's orders. A few days later, Logan sat alone in his room, staring at a sheet of paper in his hands. Out of the 350 mercenaries they had recruited, only 312 had passed the basic qualification test. After reviewing the numbers, Logan decided it was more than sufficient. Before he could think further, someone interrupted him. It was Hamar, who asked what kind of document Logan had received. Logan explained that it was a schematic for a crossbow he wanted Hamar to build. He added that the design might look crude to a professional craftsman. In his mind, Logan knew this weapon well. He had used it for decades in his previous life, so he drew every structure he could remember. Since Hamar was a master craftsman, Logan believed he could bring it to life. Hamar studied the design and pointed out that the crossbow would need a cartridge mounted at the back to store bolts, reload automatically, and fire 3 shots in succession. He demanded to know who came up with such a ridiculous idea. Logan admitted it was his own, which immediately irritated the dwarf. Still, Hamar admitted the concept itself was brilliant. However, he warned that twisting the string in that structure would cause it to snap, and attaching a wooden box to the back would make it uncomfortable for the shooter. He asked Logan what he planned to do about those issues. Logan casually replied that it wasn't his problem and that Hamar should figure it out himself. That response made the dwarf visibly furious. Logan quickly clarified that he was joking. He agreed that the bolt size needed to be reduced to shrink the cartridge and accepted that it would be a single-shot weapon. Instead, he suggested producing preloaded cartridges that could be swapped after each shot, calling them magazines for simplicity. Hamar was left speechless. He pointed out that even a skilled shooter couldn't fire 2 bolts from a crossbow in under a minute, and that this design felt like a weapon from another era entirely. Logan thought to himself that it was exactly that, a weapon born in the future. Hamar then commented that most people believed building such a weapon only required a spring, some wood, glue, and a bowstring. To him, this was a challenge worth taking on. He said he would attempt it. Logan immediately asked when it would be ready. Hamar shot back, asking whether Logan was seriously placing a deadline on something he had never seen before. Logan responded that it was still a weapon created by humans. Hamar was confused and asked who had made it and where. Logan ignored the question and challenged him instead, saying that if he thought he couldn't do it, he might as well give up. That was enough to trigger Hamar's pride. He declared that he only needed a month and that he would produce something far superior. Watching this unfold, Logan felt satisfied. Messing with a dwarf's ego really did work wonders. Later, on the castle's training grounds, Victor was seen running laps. Logan warned him that he was slowing down again and that he could push harder. Victor forced himself to accelerate. Logan reflected that for several days after bringing him in, all he had done was feed him properly and let him sleep. The transformation from just that alone was shocking. Eventually, Logan ordered him to rest, and Victor's little sister immediately ran over to him. Once again, Logan thought about what an incredible investment Victor had been. At only 14 years old and smaller than boys his age, Victor had managed to run 20 kilometers without stopping. The talent was obvious. But what impressed Logan even more was his perseverance. The boy seemed unbothered by pain or exhaustion. It became clear to Logan that Victor wasn't born a noble slayer. That path likely emerged because of his sister. Logan cut off his thoughts and told Victor that rest time was over. He tossed him a sword and announced that from that moment on, Victor would begin learning the sword technique of the Kingdom of Grandia, the standard style every aspiring knight was taught. Soon, Logan called for Victor's attention and demonstrated the technique himself. He gripped the sword firmly and sliced through the air with power. Victor looked unimpressed. All he wanted was to collapse and sleep. Still, he clenched his teeth. If exhaustion was the price for good food and a proper bed, he would pay it. He mimicked Logan's movements and cut through the air flawlessly. Watching him, Logan was stunned. Victor's execution matched his own perfectly. Not just the motion, but his breathing as well. And Logan had only demonstrated it once. Seeing how effortlessly Victor followed made Logan admit that even Ronian hadn't been this talented at the same age. Logan told Victor that once he built enough stamina and performed the technique perfectly more than 1,000 times in a row, he could call himself a knight. Victor's eyes lit up at the thought. When Logan asked if he believed he could do it, Victor answered eagerly that he could. Logan added that if Victor needed anything for his training, he could ask Rick, who would probably handle most requests. Victor shook his head and said he didn't need anything. Logan pressed him again, but Victor's only request was that Logan take care of his sister. That alone was enough for him. Logan thought it was the perfect answer. As he continued overseeing Victor's training, Logan acknowledged that the boy wasn't ready for war yet, but in the future, he would become a powerful asset to House McLean. He also concluded that the mercenary corps and whatever weapon Hamar managed to create would form a terrifying force together. Even so, Logan reminded himself not to get carried away. Hamar might fail to build a proper crossbow, and even if he succeeded, the mercenaries might not know how to use it effectively. Since he had entrusted so much to others, Logan knew he needed to prepare another plan as well. Sometime later, Logan went to his father's office and requested permission to take part in the knight's training. To his surprise, Patrick agreed. That same night, at the training grounds, Captain Hankley formally introduced Logan to the rest of the knights, making it clear that from that point onward, Logan would be training alongside them. The announcement was not well received. Whispers spread immediately through the ranks. Many of the knights believed Logan was treating the knightly order like a joke, especially after defeating Dominan. As the murmurs grew, Hankley recalled a past conversation with the Patriarch. He remembered standing in Patrick's chamber, discussing Logan's entry into the order. Hankley had been strongly against it. He had warned Patrick that the knights would never accept him. Patrick, however, had shut that down quickly. He told Hankley that he wasn't asking for special treatment for his son. In fact, he wanted Logan treated exactly like any other rookie, if not harsher. Back in the present, Hankley thought that despite those words, Logan was still the Lord's son. It would have been much easier if Patrick had asked him to go easy on the boy instead. Logan noticed the captain's unease and reassured him. He said that if he failed even one exercise during the upcoming week, he would quietly step aside and never interfere with Hankley again. The captain was taken aback by that attitude, but eventually agreed. After hearing this, Hankley made a decision. For the next week, the knightly order's training would be pushed to 3 times its usual difficulty. Soon, One of the knights was seen running while carrying another on his back, wondering what kind of insane training this was. Hankly shouted at them not to die, and reminded them that, as cavalry knights, they needed to understand what it felt like to be the horse itself. He told them to feel the burden of carrying armored riders across the battlefield. That was when the knights realized why they had been training in full armor the entire time. Some of them cursed under their breath, blaming everything on that troublesome newcomer. They started betting on how long Logan would last. 1 day, 2 days, maybe 3. They were wrong. Logan was sprinting at full speed, charging through the field, weaving past everyone else. The sight left the knights speechless. Even Captain Hankley was stunned. To make it worse, Logan was smiling the entire time. Hankley grew furious. At this rate, it wasn't Logan who would fall behind, it was the knights themselves. He immediately ordered everyone to stop and announced a 10-minute break. Then he walked over to Logan, asking how he was feeling after that run. What Hankley really expected was an honest admission of exhaustion, an excuse to pull Logan out of the madness. But Logan cut him off before he could finish. He said it was easy. Hankley was dumbfounded and asked what he meant. Logan replied that it was excellent training. If the knights went through this every day, there was no way they wouldn't become strong. He even added that he was looking forward to the next session. Nearby, 2 knights lay on the ground, barely holding on. Hankley realized this was not how he intended things to go. Logan, on the other hand, clearly didn't care. Later that night, Logan looked around the training grounds and realized he was completely alone. Everyone else had already gone home. Standing there, he reflected on why he was doing this. Training with the knights was his insurance plan. If all his other preparations failed, he would still be able to join the knights and fight on the front lines. Building bonds now would only help later. There was another reason as well. Through meditation, he could develop his force, but physical training was just as important, and the knightly order provided exactly that. As he imagined his force core growing stronger and his body feeling no fatigue, Logan drew his sword and unleashed a quick force, slash, clean, and sharp. He marveled at the fact that all this power came from just a 1-star core. When he reached 2 stars, he believed he would be able to rival a high-ranking knight, like his father. The next morning, Logan tested the crossbows Hamar had made, and dismissed them all as failures. He bluntly asked Hamar if this was the best he could do. He pointed out that the weapon only fired once, and that there was no magazine system in sight. He reminded him that the mechanism needed to be integrated. Hamar exploded in anger. Logan immediately apologized, admitting he had been too harsh. Hamar responded that Logan was right about one thing: no matter their relationship, a craftsman's pride should never be insulted. But what Logan truly meant was that if this was Hamar's limit, then their plans were doomed. That realization nearly made the dwarf lose control. Logan continued pressing, saying that maybe he had overestimated Hamar. Weeks had passed, and nothing satisfactory had been produced. That was when Logan crossed the line. He openly provoked Hamar, saying he had misjudged him, wasted money on him, and been completely wrong to trust him. That was the final trigger. Hamar demanded 1 more month and guaranteed that he would return with something worthy of the investment. In his fury, he smashed the crossbow in his hand before storming off. Logan watched him leave, thinking about how anger would consume him and force him to start over from nothing. A cruel smile crept onto Logan's face as he wondered how far Hamar could go if he was pushed even harder. 1 month later, on one of the training fields, Hamar returned to demonstrate his new creation. The improved crossbow fired 2 bolts at the same time. Logan was left speechless. Hamar explained that although it had 1 fewer shot than originally requested, it was easier to wield with 1 hand and allowed magazines to be swapped quickly. What impressed Logan most was the reload speed: 2 seconds. That alone exceeded his expectations. While the weapon had a shorter range and smaller size than the one from Logan's past life, it was far better suited for mounted combat. For cavalry, it was perfect. Logan couldn't believe how far they had come when there were still months left before the war. When Hamar asked if Logan was even paying attention, Logan suddenly lifted him up like a child, praising him loudly, boasting about dwarves, and wishing long life upon Hamar and his people. Hamar panicked, telling him to put him down before someone saw. He reminded Logan that he wasn't a child. Logan set him down and calmly met his eyes, clearly about to ask something. When Hamar asked what it was, Logan's expression shifted back to something unsettling. He said he needed 400 of these crossbows, and he needed them within 2 months. Logan handed the completed crossbows to Kaisalon and the mercenaries for testing. The moment they fired, everyone was stunned. The bolts traveled an incredible distance, and the weapons could fire consecutive shots without delay. Kaisalon examined one closely, completely baffled. A front-loading crossbow with this kind of range, power, and firing speed made no sense. As the realization sank in, Kaisalon imagined what 300 or more mounted soldiers equipped with these weapons could do. Just thinking about it sent a chill down his spine. He told Logan that what he had created was terrifyingly impressive, and finally understood that this had been Logan's intention from the very beginning. Logan confirmed it. He reflected that Hamar had gone through hell to achieve this. Even with additional craftsmen helping him, Logan never expected Hamar to finish the order 2 months ahead of schedule, let alone produce an extra 100 crossbows. That was the mark of a true expert dwarf. There was no denying it. Logan briefly considered sharing the technology with the knights and regular soldiers, but the cost alone made it unrealistic. Worse, there was the risk of the design leaking. For now, it was better to keep it contained. He instructed Kaisalon to equip the mercenaries with the crossbows and clear out the monsters roaming outside the territory. Kaisalon initially thought the plan was impossible, but Logan remained confident. After some thought, Kaisalon admitted that it might actually work. Logan wasn't satisfied with might. He told Kaisalon to make it work, because if he couldn't, nothing else mattered. Kaisalon finally understood. Logan hadn't built this weapon just to deal with monsters. He was preparing for war. During one of the knight training sessions, a knight commented on Logan's insane physical stamina. Another joked about whether that ridiculous endurance was something he inherited. A third added that if Logan was anything like the patriarch, he was probably skilled with a sword. The conversation shifted to Logan's duel with Dominan, until one knight warned the others not to compare him to Patrick. Even before awakening his force, Logan had lost to his younger brother. Still, it was impressive that he had endured this training for over a month. What had originally been designed to make him quit had instead become the new standard for the Knight Order. The training was exhausting, but far more meaningful than pointless drills. It felt like the proper level for real knights. Unexpectedly, it motivated the lower-ranking knights who had previously been slacking off. They also began to truly understand their horses, forming stronger bonds with them. Captain Hankley realized that he had only pushed this training because the young master refused to give up. He never imagined it would produce results like this. It felt as if his good luck had walked straight up to him. That night, alone in his room, Logan reflected on his progress. After exhausting his body through training, he used meditation to stimulate his inner consciousness. The combination was working in perfect sync, and he could feel real improvement. He had already started noticing subtle changes in his force. If this continued, he believed he could surpass even the monsters he had faced in his previous life. Then something unexpected happened. Logan's core expanded. He began muttering nonsense as the transformation completed, and just like that, his core advanced to 2 stars. He realized this meant he now had the foundation required to learn the next secret sword technique, Iron Cut. Murderous Iron Cut. Just remembering the power granted by the first technique made his heart race. The second would be far stronger than he could imagine. If he mastered it before the war, even a high-ranking knight wouldn't intimidate him anymore. The next day, Kaisalon and the mercenaries encountered a group of goblins. The soldiers opened fire, killing them almost instantly. One mercenary noted the lack of recoil, while another observed that his bolt pierced one goblin's head and still embedded itself into another behind it. Logan watched as a swarm of over 100 monsters was wiped out in under 10 seconds. The mercenaries' old habits with basic crossbows had vanished. They were far faster at swapping magazines now. Logan thought the effort of traveling so deep into the territory had been worth it. Kaisalon asked if Logan was satisfied. Logan answered that he was, more or less. He remembered how disastrous their first hunt had been and acknowledged how much they had improved since then. Kaisalon then questioned why Logan had gone to such lengths, saying he had never heard of a mercenary force equipped with this level of firepower. He even asked whether Logan planned to hunt monsters across the entire continent. Before Logan could answer, a mounted knight arrived at full speed, delivering a message from Rick. The day before, Viscount Tesron had officially declared war on House McLean. Inside the McLean war room, Patrick and the other family heads watched through a crystal ball as Viscount Tesron announced his declaration. He claimed that because one of his ancestors had been unjustly killed long ago, he blamed House McLean. Patrick was left speechless. Several nobles exchanged looks, questioning whether such words justified a war at all. Hankley and Marion turned to Patrick, asking what his next move would be. Hankley explained that Tesron's Knight Order alone outnumbered theirs. Even with Patrick on the battlefield, their odds were grim. One noble suggested fortifying the city and waiting for reinforcements. Another proposed sending an emissary to negotiate peace. Patrick exploded. He ordered everyone to shut up. He reminded them that even though the royal family's authority had weakened, declaring war without permission made one thing clear. Tesron had planned this from the start. Peace was impossible. Patrick ordered immediate war preparations and demanded a winning strategy, refusing to tolerate dissent. In the heavy silence that followed, a noble asked whether young Master Logan would also fight. Patrick confirmed it. Marion added that Ronian's force had awakened and that he was old enough to take part as well. Realizing Logan wasn't in the castle, Rick hurried to send a messenger to him. When Logan received the news, he was confused. According to his memories from his past life, the war shouldn't have started for another 2 months. Something had accelerated the timeline. The messenger urged him to hurry, explaining that Viscount Tesron had already launched an attack immediately after declaring war, breaking all customs. Logan needed to reach the battlefield as soon as possible. Kaisalon and the mercenaries declared they were ready to move at a moment's notice. Logan remarked that Kaisalon didn't seem surprised at all. Kaisalon replied that mercenaries welcomed war. If none existed, they would create one, and now that they had such powerful weapons, it was only natural they wanted to use them. Logan looked at his troops and thought they were dangerously confident. Still, he didn't stop them. Their confidence wasn't unfounded. They had trained relentlessly for months and slaughtered monster hordes with overwhelming force. Logan stated that it didn't matter when the war began. All that mattered was winning. Believing they now had sufficient combat strength, Logan ordered his forces to march toward the McLean Plains, convinced that this war would end in victory. Back in the barony, the war erupted earlier than anyone expected. Just one day after the declaration, Tesron and his army appeared at the McLean estate. Their numbers exceeded even the vassals' worst expectations. Captain Hankley reported that Tesron's army consisted of 100 knights, over 1,000 regular soldiers, and nearly 10,000 conscripts. It was a full-scale war. Patrick thought Tesron had lost his mind. Not only was he fielding superhuman knights, but he was also throwing conscripts into what should have been a limited domestic feud. Patrick questioned what could drive Viscount Tesron to such extremes. Then things worsened. Hankley reported that House Kairos had issued a warning stating they would not send reinforcements. Patrick and Mary were left speechless. Mary argued it had to be a mistake, insisting that she and Dwayne had checked everything to prevent this exact outcome. With no other choice, Patrick ordered Hankley to gather every man capable of wielding a weapon. They would respond with full force. Patrick reflected bitterly on how Kairos, whom they trusted completely, had abandoned them at their most desperate moment. House McLean assembled everything they had: 53 knights, 552 regular soldiers, 4,418 conscripts, a total of 5,023 combatants. Still, it wasn't even half of Tesron's army. On the battlefield, two soldiers whispered to each other. One asked where young Master Logan was. The other answered that Logan had been gone for a long time and still hadn't returned. A few nearby soldiers muttered that he probably wouldn't come back at all, guessing that he must have fled as soon as he heard about the war. Hearing this, Ronian turned sharply and demanded to know what they were talking about. He said there was no way Logan would ever do something like that. Ronian believed Logan had already foreseen this war, and that was exactly why he had taught him that secret technique. There was no chance Logan would run away now. Some of the soldiers nearby overheard Ronian's words, but instead of reassuring them, it only reinforced the rumors spreading through the ranks that the Lord's eldest son had deserted. Soon after, Patrick appeared beside Ronian. He told his youngest son that he would have to take Logan's place on the battlefield and ordered him not to hesitate or waver. Patrick himself didn't want to believe the rumors either, but belief no longer mattered. What mattered now was victory. With that resolve, he commanded all troops to advance and crush the scum daring to attack his home. At that moment, Tesron appeared with a confident smile, pleased to see Patrick finally draw his sword. He shouted that his knights were his blade and challenged Patrick to face them head-on. Patrick gathered his aura and charged forward, attempting to smash through the enemy vanguard, but his attack was stopped cold when a knight bearing a shield blocked him completely, leaving Patrick momentarily stunned. Rick was also present on the battlefield, and his expression was grim. He watched soldiers being slaughtered and torn apart right in front of him. He realized how badly they were losing. They had been forced to send even non-combatants like him into battle because of the overwhelming numerical disadvantage. If they were fully surrounded, they were finished. In the middle of his thoughts, Rick was suddenly struck on the head by a Tesron soldier who was about to kill him. He barely managed to dodge as an ally intervened, killing the attacker and shouting at Rick to get up and ready his spear. Rick reached out to thank him, but before he could say a word, an enemy knight cut his savior down, spraying blood across Rick's face. At that moment, Rick understood something clearly. His only chance to survive was to escape as far away from the enemy lines as possible. Mounted soldiers soon charged forward, and Rick stumbled through piles of corpses, both allies and enemies. He realized with horror that they were surrounded from behind as well. This might be where all of them would die. Meanwhile, Patrick continued fighting his opponents. After repelling one attack, the knight he was facing acknowledged Patrick's strength, saying he truly lived up to his reputation. Patrick, however, was uneasy. They had clearly prepared for him, and even so, he wasn't confident in his current condition. He noticed that this knight had endured blows infused with explosive force and was still standing. What shocked Patrick further was realizing that Tesron possessed a high-ranking knight. Judging by their coordination, the other knights surrounding him were likely at least intermediate level as well. Was that why they showed no fear? Patrick demanded to know if they were the ones assigned to deal with him. The knight answered with a question of his own, asking Patrick what he thought of their preparations. Surrounded by 4 knights, Patrick realized that if he remained trapped there, the situation would spiral out of control as more knights joined in. He raised his sword and charged again, swearing that this would never happen. He clashed blades with the high-ranking knight, only to be attacked from behind by another enemy wielding a spear. He narrowly avoided the fatal strike. Seeing that they were attacking from all sides, Patrick shouted in fury, asking whether they had any honor as knights and cursing them for fighting like cowards. The enemies clearly didn't care. One of them even remarked that this would be his last battle before death, so Patrick should stop complaining. Patrick attacked again with everything he had, colliding swords with one of his enemies. This time, luck abandoned him. A spear pierced into his back, tearing through his stomach and leaving him gravely wounded. He realized the truth then. While the high-ranking knight kept him occupied, the others struck whenever they pleased. It was a perfect trap. There was no escape. As the enemy closed in, Patrick bitterly thought that Logan had made the right choice by fleeing. At the very least, he hoped Logan would survive and carry on the McLean legacy. From a distance, Tesron watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. He congratulated himself on keeping his high-ranking knight hidden until now. Once Patrick fell, taking McLean Castle would be easy. Just as he prepared to issue his next command, he heard something unexpected behind him. The sound of cavalry. A servant rushed over, reporting that a mounted unit was approaching from the rear. Around 300 riders, possibly more. Tesron paused, wondering if the McLeans had hidden troops he didn't know about. The servant hesitated, then added that something was strange. The approaching cavalry wasn't carrying lances. Their only weapons were small crossbows. Tesron burst out laughing. He mocked the report, asking if those were the tiny crossbows hunters used. He ordered the rear guard and archers to wipe them out immediately, dismissing them as nothing more than fifth-rate soldiers. Before he could finish speaking, a bolt tore straight through the servant's head. Tesron froze inside his armor. Logan had entered the battlefield, and he was furious. He gave the order to fire. Instantly, a storm of bolts rained down on Tesron's forces. The mercenaries' projectiles punched through armor, shields, and flesh alike. Hundreds fell in mere seconds. One soldier realized that anyone who failed to raise a shield in time was already dead, and that he himself would have joined them if he had reacted a moment later. Tesron's archers scrambled to return fire, but their arrows fell harmlessly short. Their bows couldn't reach Logan's troops. Another volley followed, cutting down even more of Tesron's soldiers. Watching the rear collapse in seconds, Tesron couldn't understand what was happening. There was no magic involved, just those cursed crossbows. Questioning, what kind of weapon had the McLeans created? Enraged, Tesron screamed at his knights to turn back and destroy those bastards. The cavalry charged at full speed toward Logan's forces. Logan watched them coming with a smile. At the same time, another fight was unfolding nearby. Ronian was locked in combat with an enemy knight. He narrowly dodged an incoming strike, and his opponent mockingly praised him for reacting well. As weapons clashed around them, one soldier shouted to his comrade to stop playing around with the kid, reminding him that the battle had already turned deadly. The other replied that he wasn't holding back at all, adding that even though Ronian was young, he couldn't be underestimated. Hearing their exchange, something finally clicked for Ronian. This wasn't training anymore. This was real war. Compared to this chaos, he realized he wasn't some prodigy, just a boy who had awakened his force early. Even so, losing wasn't an option. Too much depended on him. He thought of his father, who had entrusted him with doing Logan's part in this war as well. He couldn't afford to hesitate here. As his thoughts raced, an opening suddenly appeared. Ronian noticed one of the enemy soldiers had turned his back, completely exposed. He had no idea why the man was doing something so careless, but Ronian knew this chance wouldn't come twice. Without hesitation, he swung his sword in a decisive arc, slicing straight through the soldier's body. It was over so easily that even Ronian was shocked. Then he noticed something embedded in the fallen enemy's chest, a bolt. Looking up, his face lit up with joy as he saw Logan in the distance, shouting his name at the top of his lungs. But that moment of relief was brief. More enemy knights were charging furiously from behind Ronian's position, rushing toward Logan under the Viscount's command. Logan watched their movement and immediately recognized the kite shield formation they had adopted. It was a strong defensive tactic, but it wouldn't be enough. This was where his real plan came into play. Logan calmly ordered his mercenaries to aim their crossbows diagonally toward the ground. The command confused them once again. Then Logan flashed that unsettling psychotic smile and gave the real order: fire at the horses. He wasn't holding back anymore. Dirty tricks were fair game if it meant winning. The mercenaries reacted instantly, grinning with the same bloodthirsty excitement as Logan. A hail of bolts tore into the cavalry's mounts. Horses screamed and collapsed, throwing riders violently to the ground and shattering the charge in seconds. Logan felt relief knowing he had arrived in time to support Ronian. But the battle wasn't over. His father was still in danger. Remembering his vow to save his family in this life, Logan knew that victory meant nothing if Patrick fell. He issued a quick command to Kaisalon and immediately rushed toward his father. Kaisalon panicked. This wasn't part of the plan. Victory was already within reach, and Logan was risking everything by charging ahead alone. Even if Logan was stronger, running into a mid-ranking knight could turn the tide. Still, Kaisalon pulled himself together and ordered Gerald to provide covering fire as Logan cut through the enemy lines. Patrick was still locked in a brutal duel with the high-ranking knight, and the situation looked grim. The knight mocked him, saying he couldn't believe Patrick would recklessly charge forward knowing he'd be impaled. At the last second, Patrick twisted away and leapt back, barely creating enough space to breathe. As he observed the enemy's movements, something felt off. They were fighting with desperation, pushing themselves beyond reason, practically throwing their lives away. That didn't make sense. They had the advantage. Why were they acting like cornered animals? Before he could think further, Patrick deflected 2 incoming lances in quick succession. Then, out of nowhere, Logan appeared in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Logan cut down 2 mid-level knights, leaving Patrick completely stunned. Patrick remembered seeing Logan enter the battlefield with a mercenary force far behind enemy lines. There was no way he should have reached this spot so quickly. As Patrick turned his head, the sight behind him froze his thoughts entirely. The ground was littered with corpses, an ocean of bodies stretching across the field. Patrick wanted to ask how Logan had become this strong, but now wasn't the time. Nothing made sense anyway. Instead, he asked the only question that mattered: did Logan's arrival mean they were winning? Logan simply nodded. Hearing that, Patrick placed a hand on his son's shoulder and told him he had done well. The high-ranking knight stared at Logan in disbelief. A 20-year-old boy from a remote barony had just taken down 2 mid-level knights effortlessly. At that age, the knight himself had been destroying his body just to qualify as a knight. None of that mattered now. He resolved to kill Logan on the spot. He barked orders at his fallen comrades, telling them to regroup. Patrick, watching this, realized something critical. Logan was strong enough to handle most mid-level knights. If Logan took care of them while he focused on the high-ranking knight, they might still win this battle. But Logan had other plans. He stepped in front of Patrick and extended his arm, declaring that he would face the high-ranking knight alone. Patrick immediately objected, warning him it was too dangerous. He acknowledged Logan's growth, but reminded him this enemy was high rank. Patrick didn't finish his sentence. Logan punched him hard in the stomach, knocking him flat onto the ground. Logan bluntly stated that in his current condition, even he could defeat his father. He told Patrick to trust him and leave this fight to him. Reluctantly, Patrick agreed. He warned Logan to be careful. Logan replied that they didn't have time, they needed to finish this quickly. The high-ranking knight was furious. How dare a brat like this advance on him? He surged forward, pouring his strength into his strike. Their swords collided, and with a single blow, Logan sent the knight skidding back several meters, leaving him stunned. The knight couldn't understand it. Despite Logan's injuries, he sensed no overwhelming aura or superior level, and yet, he was being overpowered. There was only one explanation. Logan was pushing himself beyond his limits. The knight attacked again, with killing intent. They exchanged blows at blinding speed, leaping back and forth, blades clashing. As their swords locked once more, the knight thought that if he weren't injured, he would already have won. That was when Logan saw it, a fleeting opening. He struck instantly, slicing his opponent and inflicting a deep wound. Logan leapt back just in time to avoid the counterattack. As the knight analyzed the exchange, he realized there were no obvious gaps. Logan needed to force one. Then he noticed something, and Logan noticed it too. The knight was absorbing the force behind Logan's strikes. Thinking he had sprung his trap, the knight declared that Logan had fallen right into it and prepared to finish him. Logan appeared off balance. The killing blow was about to land, but it never did. Logan regained his footing instantly, leaving the knight questioning whether his own movements had slowed. Logan's aura surged as he prepared his sacred technique. The knight felt it immediately and knew he had to retreat. Too late. Logan unleashed a devastating wave of cutting energy. The attack erased the high-ranking knight in a single strike. The battlefield fell silent. Logan roared that he, Logan McLean, had slain the enemy general of Tesseron's army. Panic spread through Tesseron's ranks. Soldiers stared in disbelief. A high-ranking knight had fallen. With the Viscount's banner nowhere in sight, morale collapsed. Weapons clattered to the ground as soldiers begged to surrender. Rick began chanting Logan's name, praying for his master's safety. One by one, the voices joined him, until the battlefield echoed with it. The Viscount was already fleeing the battlefield, his mind spiraling as he tried to understand where everything had gone wrong. 3 full years of preparation had amounted to nothing. He had sought support from other nobles, gathered 100 knights, and yet everything collapsed because of that damned red-haired boy and his strange weapons. Thinking quickly, Tesseron decided that survival came first. If he could just make it back to his own territory, he might escape with his life. When he reached his castle, he shouted for the guards to open the gates. The soldiers were stunned to see him return so suddenly. Before the gates could fully open, another guard spotted movement in the distance and shouted a warning. Knights were approaching, and Logan was leading them. Tesseron froze in place at the sight. Logan dismounted calmly and remarked that the Viscount had been pretty quick to run. Then, standing directly before the gates of Tesseron's territory, Logan raised his voice so everyone could hear and declared that Tesseron had already lost the war. He ordered the garrison to open the gates and welcome the true victor. From atop the walls, the soldiers hesitated. Some wondered if it was true, if that was why their lord had rushed back in such a panic. Before doubt could spread further, a general barked at them, demanding to know whether they planned to cower just because the enemy spoke boldly. The men snapped back to attention. The general pointed out that there were only a little over over 300 enemies outside. As Logan charged his aura again, the general insisted that such a small force could never take the castle in a siege. The soldiers guarding the gate were confused about what Logan was doing until he leapt over the wall, soaring dozens of meters into the air. Landing inside, he calmly told the general to open the gates unless everyone there wanted to die. Otherwise, he would kill them himself and open the gates personally. Inside the palace, Tesron was frantically stuffing gold coins and valuables into bags, thinking that at the very least, he should escape with some wealth. Suddenly, Logan's voice rang out behind him, announcing that he had finally caught up. Tesron stumbled backward in terror and demanded to know how Logan had gotten inside. Logan replied coldly that Tesron's own servants had betrayed him before he even needed to draw his sword, which spoke volumes about the Viscount's reputation as a ruler. Furious, Tesron cursed his servants for their betrayal. Then fear overtook him again. He dropped to a pleading tone, declaring his surrender and promising reparations according to feudal conventions. He begged Logan to spare his life and the lives of his family. Logan scoffed and asked him what right he had to speak of conventions. He looked down at Tesron and reminded him that he had declared war without warning and invaded everything in a single day. Logan's fury was unmistakable, a vein bulging on his forehead as he questioned whether Tesron had any conscience at all. Tesron tried one last appeal, arguing that noble honor and feudal law guaranteed the safety of prisoners. Logan agreed on one condition. He said he would uphold the honor and customs of his own house, House McLean. Therefore, Tesron's life would be spared, and he would be allowed to take a limited amount of wealth and leave. Tesron was about to thank him when Logan interrupted. He said that if Patrick had been standing there, he truly would have done all of that. Patrick was an honorable man, one who might even accept unconditional surrender. As Logan spoke, he noticed a diamond-studded dagger resting inside a chest. He picked it up, admiring its craftsmanship. Tesron quickly insisted Logan keep it, saying it was made by the finest craftsman in the kingdom. Logan refused, and told Tesron to take it with him. Then, without warning, Logan drove the dagger straight into Tesron's chest. As Tesron collapsed, he accused Logan of lying, shouting that he had promised to spare his life. Logan replied calmly that he never made such a promise, he had only described what his father would have done. Unfortunately for Tesron, Logan was nothing like him. Tesron tried to mutter something about noble honor, but Logan cut him off, asking if he had any idea how many people had died because of his greed. He ordered him to end his filthy life right there. Tesron fell dead to the floor. Looking down at the corpse, Logan thought that Tesron should be grateful for such a quick death. He clenched his fist, still stained with blood, and exhaled slowly. The crisis was finally over. All that remained were the finishing touches. He loudly announced that Viscount Raymond Tesron had taken his own life. That would be enough. Moments later, Kaisalon entered and informed Logan that he should inspect the castle's underground prison. A few days later, outside the walls of Tesron's castle, Logan stood with his father. Patrick explained that he had come as soon as he recovered from his injuries. He asked about Tesron's suicide. Logan confirmed it, remarking that Tesron must have been driven to despair. Patrick wasn't convinced. He stepped closer and bluntly asked whether Logan had killed Tesron himself. The two locked eyes in a tense stare, as if a fight might break out. Logan finally admitted the truth. Yes, he had eliminated Tesron deliberately. He explained that sometimes they needed to take matters into their own hands, and that leaving Tesron's bloodline alive would only invite future disasters. Patrick studied his son for a long moment. Then he praised him, saying Logan was a grown man now and must have had his reasons. He added that no matter what anyone said, Logan was the key figure in this war, and thanked him sincerely. Hearing this filled Logan with happiness. He looked at his father and smiled wide and genuine. Patrick, blushing and fumbling his words, told him he had done a good job. Then he shared even more news. Logan would be officially named the heir of House McLean. Logan smiled again, then shook his head and refused. Patrick was stunned and demanded to know why. Was Logan worried about his reputation? Patrick assured him that his achievements in the war were more than enough to silence all criticism. But that wasn't the reason. Logan explained that Ronian was far more suitable to inherit the family. The McLeans were a family of knights, and Ronian had awakened his force at only 14, 4 years earlier than Logan himself. There was no telling how strong he would become as an adult. Patrick was left speechless. He argued that strength alone didn't decide who should lead a noble house. Logan agreed that under normal beliefs, that was true. But if Ronian earned the title of the continent's youngest force user, as he had in Logan's previous life, there would be no objections at all. More importantly, Logan had no personal interest in becoming Baron. He didn't want to waste time tied to that role. As the older brother, Logan said he wanted to give Ronian the chance he deserved. He asked Patrick to delay choosing a successor until Ronian came of age. Patrick admitted he never imagined Logan cared so deeply for his brother, but agreed to his request. The decision would be postponed for 5 years, until Ronian became an adult. Logan thanked his father. Still, Patrick insisted on granting him another reward. They would return to the mansion to calculate the spoils of war, which would likely reach several 100,000 gold pieces. But judging by Logan's expression, he already had something else in mind.